Hey everybody, it's LavenderTowne, and today I'm designing monsters based on lullabies and nursery rhymes, some of which have a pretty disturbing origin. I wanted to start with Ring Around the Rosie, firstly because it's very popular and common, and also because many people believe it to have a tremendously dark origin, that being the Black Plague. There are multiple lines that people attribute to the plague, such as a pocket full of posies, possibly referring to flowers that people kept on themselves to supposedly ward off the disease and cover up the smell of death all around them, ashes, ashes, and we all falling down, referencing the people dying en masse and being burned and cremated, as well as the titular line, Ring Around the Rosie, potentially referring to the not wounds, but the sores that people would get on their body when they were afflicted with the plague. Interestingly, historians actually don't believe that this is the origin of this song and think it actually has a much more innocent meaning to it, but it's hard to actually know just because it is such an old nursery rhyme. It's hard to even track back where it originally started. Regardless, I still wanted to create a monster based on this plague interpretation just because I think it's really entertaining and spooky for October. I decided to give her a mask. It's supposed to be sort of an allusion to the plague doctors, the masks that they would wear, as well as kind of looking like a bird and a skull all at once. And I put a posy in her hand, a posy just being a small bouquet of flowers. I originally thought it was a specific type of flower, but I found out through research on this video that it can kind of refer to any small grouping of flowers. And I put some rats around her feet, of course, because rats are attributed with spreading the Black Plague. I feel bad for them though. It was really the fleas on them that spread it, but regardless. I also put lots of flowers all over this character design. I even had them coming out of her wounds on her arms. The Black Plague is a really gross and terrifying ailment. It causes a lot of lumps and sort of injuries and stuff, of ailments all over the flesh, so I wanted to lean into that without it getting too gross. And I put a sort of funerary shroud over this character because I really just wanted her to read like death, like the tiny Grim Reaper is coming for you in the form of this plague. And I made it the one pop of color on this design that's otherwise very monochromatic, with a little bit of terracotta color for the flowers. And here she is. I also put this little ring around the back of her head because, ring around the Rosie. Next up is Humpty Dumpty, and Humpty Dumpty has been on my mind a lot lately just because of something horrifying that I read, which is that it was never specified in the rhyme that he is an egg. We always see him depicted as an egg, and it makes the idea of him having a great fall and being unable to be put back together a lot more palatable for a child's mind. But when you think about the fact that he could just be a person, it makes it a lot scarier. So I decided to create this sort of wraith who's shattered at the head. I just thought that would be very spooky, not too gory and literal with it, but more of a surreal, haunting sort of shattering of a person, just because I thought that would be really scary. And I really wanted to lean into this idea of being broken in a way that is irreparable. I thought that would be a great sort of basis for a monster. In fact, monster designs that take the human form and then just shift them or alter them in a few small ways are usually the things that scare me the most personally. So you might be seeing some of my monster preferences coming through on this one. I didn't want it to look humorous at all. I wanted it to definitely look deeply unsettling, and I tried to show this ashy black sort of material coming out from the head, so it doesn't just look like someone who's been bashed over the head, but rather this creature that embodies this idea of being shattered. I don't know if this is too dark. I also gave him extra arms just because I really thought it would look really cool. I wish I had a better explanation for why I did it, but truthfully I just thought that it sort of felt like it was capturing that moments when you injure yourself badly, and every time is kind of slowing down and speeding up at the same time. I don't think he literally has 4 arms, but it's more about capturing this feeling of like panic and movement and stuff. That's at least what I tried to get across with him. I tried to give him some like relatively fancy looking clothes. I was just thinking into the lore of this concept, and I was thinking if all the king's horses and all the king's men did try to put Humpty back together again, then that must mean he has some kind of standing and some kind of value to the king, I guess. So I made him look a little bit richer, and then I also put bandages all over him, obviously to allude to the fact that, you know, they're trying to put him back together, but he cannot be fixed. Next up is Three Blind Mice. Now, this one has always been a little bit upsetting to me when I was younger. I didn't like the idea of the mice getting their tails cut off, especially if they're already blind. It just seemed kind of mean to me. So this is a natural pick for this video because it's already kind of morbid. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the rhyme, in the rhyme, it basically just says that there's three blind mice and that the farmer's wife cuts their tails off with a carving knife. And there's no motive. I don't know what was going on in her head, why she would do this to three blind mice, but I feel really bad for them. So here's a little monster of vengeance to avenge their poor tails. I really wanted to make this non-human looking, or not, you know, just human looking, because I felt like the first two were very human. So I really leaned into this mouse silhouette, and I started getting really Lovecraftian with it when I realized that if I attached their two heads like this, it kind of looked like just one head, but the head of a monster. So I immediately started exploring with the silhouettes and trying to figure out how I can make these three blind mice look like one creature. I also had their tail wrapped around their neck as if they're holding on to it. I don't know if they want to try to reattach it or if they're going to strangle their attacker with it as a final act of revenge, but I really thought that this one turned out extra creepy. Interestingly, out of all of the nursery rhymes I've talked about so far, this might be the one that actually has a sort of morbid origin story. It turns out that the three blind mice might not be literal. It might actually be about three Protestant bishops who were executed by Queen Mary I of England. Their blindness might be a reference to the fact that they were a different religion than the one that was popular at the time. So that certainly gave a darker turn to this tale that I already thought was kind of messed up. So I decided to add a cross to the character design as well as some blood on the hands of this character. I just really think that the whole rhyme is very weird and off-putting, and I really ended up liking this monster design. I think the mouse heads all piled on top of each other and forming this new Lovecraftian shape. It's really creepy. Next up we have Mary Had a Little Lamb, and this one apparently is based on a true story of a real little girl who really did have a pet lamb and really did bring it to school one day. There's nothing I could find that's particularly scary about this one, but I just really wanted to take one that I was super familiar with and try to create a monster design, so here we go. So obviously we have a lamb in this story and a little girl, so I'm going to try to combine them. I had this idea for a sort of wolf in sheep's clothing concept, and I really pivoted this design around the specific wording of Mary had a little lamb. I know that this just means that the whole rhyme is in past tense, like many stories are, but I decided to lean into this and imply that something has happened to the little lamb, and maybe Mary is not what she claims to be. Maybe Mary is not a sweet little girl after all. So I put these fake like animal ears, fake lamb ears on the outside of her bonnet. I had to include a bonnet, of course, because she's shown with a bonnet or some kind of like big baby hat in all of the illustrations I found of her. Honestly, I struggled a lot with the fact that all my monster designs were just looking like cute furry designs, and I ended up sort of obliterating her entire face and leaving her just with these big scary wolf-like teeth. I felt like it was more fairy tale-ish, and it kept it away from looking like just some cute anthro art. And I also gave her a sort of Bo Peep style staff, and I turned it into a blade at the end, so it's kind of like combined with a one of those little crooks that they used in sheep herding back in the olden days, and a scythe. I just thought it would look nice and spooky. I put a little strawberry jam at the end, and then it was time to color. I kept things really neutral and warm. I just felt like that would fit the sort of vintage storytelling vibe, and I did a couple like plaid details to make it feel more farm-like. Honestly, it's interesting how childhood things like nursery rhymes and lullabies end up feeling so creepy later on in life. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but I've definitely noticed in a lot of horror movies they're constantly using children singing and lullabies and things slowed down and turned to minor key to make horror movies more atmospheric and scary. And honestly, I think it's really fascinating to think about our own psychology, things that used to comfort us becoming so frightening. Thank you to all of my patrons, including Alcuppa, Winkus Wonkus, Jacqueline, Biddy Boo, Blue, Razor57, Zero Expectations, Wooloo Luna, Lilia Lur, Hazel Tiffia, Elizabeth Ward, The Expressive Poker Face, Morrissey Axolotl, Big McLarge Huge, Chris Strad Subaki, Gilliana Davis, Yume Lily, John Muscat, Snow White, Hidden Squid, The Becky, Liliana Hammond, Lauren, Nya Lavali, Angel File, Q Musgrove, Trace, Nicole Ledwalk, Nicolette Queen, Rainwater Pearls, Ice Cream Pal, Best Kaiju, Lion, Storm Scribbles, Tom David Johansson, Ivan Rodriguez, Ilaria Louie, Nora Cornelison, Joseph Copel, Clockwork Construct, Rachel Singh, Dr. Casket, Your Boy ST, JJ Jade, and of course, Lib 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 Lib.